الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا ومرشدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد أما بعد. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, our sustainer, the one who has gathered us once again to listen to his word, to reflect upon it, to learn about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us everything that we need so that we might focus on becoming closer to him. We can use all of the resources around us because they are for us, but we have been created for his worship. And Allah Ta'ala, through His mercy, through His grace, has given us this book, the Qur'an, as guidance. But it's not guidance for everyone, it's guidance for those people who seek it. And we've been hearing Surah Al-Baqarah, the surah, the chapter regarding the cow, and we heard the story of the cow. And this was a surah which was revealed in the first 2 or 3 years of the time of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina Munawwara. And alhamdulillah, we have completed the first juz, the first para of the Qur'an. And so I'd just like to recap on some of the key points that we've covered in this juz, and then we'll continue inshallah. We heard at the beginning the words Alif Lam Mim. This is the way Allah Ta'ala has chosen to start this surah. Alif Lam Mim. Perhaps the English equivalent might be if someone were to say to you, AST. Now, subhanallah, we're aware of these letters, and the Arabs at the time were aware of these letters. Alif Lam Mim. Indeed, they used these letters in their everyday speech, in the way that we use these letters AST in our everyday speech. But remember, Allah Ta'ala has sent this book down as guidance for us. This is His revelation. And so if He is saying Alif Lam Mim, surely it means something great. But we don't understand it. And yet these letters are not foreign to us. We know Alif Lam Mim, in the way that the Arabs understood Alif Lam Mim to be 3 letters of their alphabet. But what do these letters mean? We don't know. And so Allah Ta'ala is showing us here that we are ignorant. We don't know everything. Our knowledge is very limited. And even when we think we know something, we may not know it. So even if we think that we're aware of these letters, and we use them all the time in our speech, but we still don't fully understand them. So the knowledge that we have is deficient too. So Allah Ta'ala is showing us that we are ignorant in many different levels, on many different levels. And so it is for us to defer all of our knowledge to Allah Ta'ala, to accept that Allah has all the knowledge. He is the Alam, He is the Alim. He knows everything. And in comparison, we know nothing. And any knowledge that we do have, it is through the will and the power of Allah Ta'ala. And then Allah Ta'ala tells us after this about this book. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. This is the book. لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There is no doubt in it. And there have been many doubters and there will be many doubters regarding the book. But Allah Ta'ala has declared at the beginning that there is no doubt in this book whatsoever. And it is guidance for the muttaqeen. So there will be many people who will read the book, who will read the Qur'an, but they won't necessarily gain the guidance. It is for those people who seek it, those people who fear Allah, those people who have believed and they want to gain guidance. only then will they gain it. Hudan lil muttaqeen, those people with taqwa, those people who accept that Allah knows their situation, Allah is the all-knowing, He sees them where they are, He knows what they think, He hears them. It is those people who will truly benefit. And they are people, and the description came that they are people who believe in the unseen, and they establish their prayer, and they give in charity from what Allah has given them, and they believe in what has come down to the Prophet ﷺ in the Qur'an, and they believe in what came before, the kitabs, the many kitabs, the Torah, the Injil, and any other revelation that came before. And they believe, they have yaqeen, they have firm belief in the akhirah, in the life after death. They are the people, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. Those are the people who are on guidance from their Lord. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And they will be the successful ones. So right at the beginning, Allah Ta'ala is teaching us to achieve this taqwa and showing us its importance. And then the description came of the disbelievers, and then a description came of the munafiqeen, those who say something on the outside but have something else on the inside. And then we heard how Allah Ta'ala has created us and He wants us to worship Him. Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, worship your Lord, the one who created you and the people who and the people who came before you. And then after that, we heard about the creation of Adam alayhi salam, about how the malaika questioned and wondered, why is it that Allah Ta'ala wants to create Adam alayhi salam when He will create so much corruption, or the people that will come after him will create so much corruption in the land. But then Allah Ta'ala showed that He is the all-wise. He is, as the malaika said, إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ. Surely you are the all-knowing and the most wise. And then afterwards we heard the long story where Allah Ta'ala time and time again talks to the Banu Israel, reminds them of the different favors that He has bestowed upon them. And we hear of the many different types of mistakes that they made. And once again I'll say that it's not for us to judge them, it's not for us to judge anyone who came before, believer or disbeliever, but it's for us to learn from their mistakes. And then we heard the story of the cow, after which this surah is named. The story where the Banu Israel asked question after question. Tell us about this cow. Tell us about its characteristics. What is its color? Tell us more about it. And so it became harder and harder to find this particular cow. They could have just gone for that one cow, any cow, but instead, after asking many questions, it became very difficult. And then they had to buy that cow, that specific cow, for its weight in gold. So it became a very expensive mistake for them. And so this teaches us an important lesson. If we know that we have a command from Allah, then yes, we may wonder what the wisdom behind it is. But we must remember that it is for us to hear and to follow. سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We have heard, and so we have followed. It is not for us to question time and time again. And indeed, too many questions may harm us, as we see in that example, and how Allah Ta'ala tells us elsewhere in the Qur'an, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe, La tas'alu an ashya'a in tubda lakum tasukkum. Don't ask about things that if they were to be made apparent for you, then they would hurt you. So don't ask too much. Ask enough to know what you're doing, but don't ask too much. Otherwise things will become difficult for you. And then we heard more of the different things that Allah Ta'ala gave to the Banu Israel, and how they were mistaken and they disbelieved, they hurt some of the Anbiya alayhi salam and so on. And then we heard about the story of Harut and Marut, the two angels that were sent to Babylon, who came to teach them magic. But before that, they always gave a disclaimer that make sure, even you've come to learn this magic from us, but remember, this is a test, we have come as a test, and so don't disbelieve. Don't allow this knowledge to take you away from Allah. And this teaches us the value of seeking correct knowledge. And even if we learn anything, then not to use it in the wrong way. If we have any resource available to us, then let us use it correctly and not in the wrong way. Because this was knowledge that was powerful enough to split a husband from his wife. So we should be careful about the knowledge that we have, or any resources that we have, the internet or whatever else we might have. We should use it appropriately, in the way that will please Allah and not do anything that will displease Him. And then Allah Ta'ala tells us about the Yahud and the Nasara, the people, the Jews and the Christians, and how the Jews said regarding the Christians, you are not correct, and the Christians said about the Jews, you are not correct, and the people who didn't know anything, so the mushrikun, the idol worshippers, they said the same thing about both of those groups. And then, of course, Allah then says, فَاللَّهُ يَحْكُمُ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah will then decide between them on the Day of Judgment. Which again teaches us an important lesson, that although it's important for us to pass on the message, we must also worry about ourselves as well. The people who have passed, Allah will decide between them. And Allah will decide and judge. Allah is the judge, it's not for us to judge. It is for us to worry about ourselves first and foremost, to improve ourselves and our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then pass on the message of Islam as much as possible, but remember ultimately the judge is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we heard the beautiful story of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam, how they were chosen by Allah to build the Kaaba, and how even after doing such a great thing, they were fulfilling the command of Allah to build this Kaaba, working hard in the blazing sun. And even then, what were they saying? رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا. Oh our Lord, accept from us. So look at the humility. And then we should think about ourselves and how sometimes if we've done a good thing, then we may think, yes, you know, I should be proud of myself. I'm very strong, or I'm a very good person. I've done this. Or some people might say, yes, you know, Alhamdulillah, I'm very good. You know, Alhamdulillah, yeah, you know. But no, this is not the way we should be. Look at the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا. Oh our Lord, accept from us. Subhanallah, the humility that they had. This is what we should try to work towards getting into ourselves as well. And then we hear about the importance given to worrying about our children. It's one thing, us worrying about ourselves, which is important, but also we should worry about our children. Elsewhere in the Qur'an, Allah says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe, Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save yourselves and save your children, save your families, your wives and your children from the fire. So here as well, we see a practical example. Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail alayhi salam are making the dua that, oh Allah, in this place, Mecca, that there will be people living here, our children and their children's children will be living here. Oh Allah, send down to them a messenger who will teach them your signs, who will then purify them, who will show them the best example. They were worried about the iman of the people that would come afterwards. And then Allah gave further examples about how Ibrahim alayhi salam himself and also Yaqub alayhi salam, how he also was worried about the same thing. about how on his deathbed he wasn't worried about how much material things he was leaving for them, but rather he said, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن بَعْدِي? What will you worship after me? This was what he was worried about. He was worried about their iman. And so imagine during his lifetime how much worry he must have had about their iman. And of course he was successful because the response he got from his sons was, قَالُوا نَعْبُدُ إِلَهَكَ. They said, we will worship your Lord. وَإِلَهَ آبَائِكَ, and the Lord of your fathers. Ibrahim wa Ismail wa Ishaq. Ilahan wahida, the one God. وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ, and we submit ourselves to Him. And this is another theme that Allah brings forth here. The theme of submission. We are Muslims, and when we say Muslim, then we don't often recognize what that means. A Muslim is a person who submits his will to Allah. He doesn't think about himself, he doesn't think about his desires. He thinks about what Allah wants from him. And so we should, as Muslims, submit our will to Allah in the way that those people did. In the way that Ibrahim alayhi salam did. When it was said to him, Aslim, when his Lord said to him, Aslim, submit, he said, Aslamtu li Rabbil Alameen, I have submitted to the Lord of the worlds. So this is how we should be too. We should not follow our desires, because our desires and shaitan will lead us astray. We should seek that straight path, the one that will take us to Jannah, inshallah. The one that we seek from Allah Ta'ala, that straight path. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. And then at the end of this juz we heard where Allah Ta'ala told us, Tilka ummatun qad khalat. So we've heard about the people who made mistakes, who disbelieved, who hurt the Anbiya alayhi salam, who even killed some of them, na'udhu billah. And then there were also such people who submitted their will to Allah. So good and bad. But ultimately at the end of this juz, Allah says, Tilka ummatun qad khalat. Those are a people, those are a nation who have passed. They've gone. Laha ma kasabat. For them is what they earned in terms of their deeds, good or bad. وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ. And for you is what you earn. For you are your deeds, so worry about your own deeds. وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And you will not be questioned about what they used to do. You will not be questioned about what they used to do. Don't worry about where you came from, but rather worry about where you're going. And there's a famous couplet of poetry which goes, मैं फ़लसफ़ी से क्या पूछूं कि मेरी इब्तिदा क्या है. मैं फ़लसफ़ी से क्या पूछूं कि मेरी इब्तिदा क्या है. मैं इस फ़िक्र में हूँ कि मेरी इंतहा क्या है. Why should I ask of the philosopher where I am coming from, what my beginning is? If I was an ape or another being, why should I worry about this? What is the use of that question? I won't be asked about this. I won't be asked about the people that came before or of the past. I am in fact worried about what my ending will be. And this is what we should be worried about. Where are we going? Are we going to Jannah or Jahannam? We need to worry about this. So that people may argue and debate about the people who came before. And we heard also where Allah Ta'ala tells us that there are some people who say, the Yahud say that Ibrahim a.s. was a Yahudi, and the Christians say that Ibrahim a.s. was a Christian. Subhanallah, why are they arguing about this? He was a Muslim, yes, he was a Muslim Hanif. He was an upright Muslim. But ultimately, they have all passed on. Worry about yourself. So then we move on. And here Allah Ta'ala tells us about the Qibla. Now, why do we need a Qibla? Now we know that as Muslims we have different types of worship. We have individual worship, and we have collective worship. And when a person is doing his individual worship, then he is able to speak to Allah, to worship Allah, wherever he is, in whichever direction. أَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Whichever way you turn, that is the way of Allah. Because Allah is not specific to one place. We can worship Allah Ta'ala in whichever direction we want. But we need a Qibla because Salah is one of those things that we do in a gathering as well as individually. And you will find that every group of people needs something that unites them. Every group of people. And you will find that certain nations will have something or other that unites them. Often it's something from their past. A hero, for example, or a national day, or an Independence Day. Something that brings them together. Something that gives them a common cause, a common goal. But then that doesn't help us, because Islam transcends all of those boundaries. Islam has come for all nations. It doesn't matter what color you are or what language you speak, Islam is for everyone. So a national day or a national hero, this doesn't help. It has to be something that goes beyond that. Now if you left it to the Muslims to decide for themselves what their specific uniting thing will be, then they would fight. They would argue. And no two people would have the same opinion. So it was necessary for there to be a decision from Allah Ta'ala that this will be your uniting thing. This will be your Qibla. This is the thing that doesn't matter where you are in the world, 5 times a day at least, you will turn towards this thing, in this direction. Of course, we only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't worship anything else. People who don't have Iman, they may wonder that are people worshipping the Kaaba? No. But this is something that we turn ourselves towards because this is one thing that unites us. And Allah Ta'ala has decided for it to be the Kaaba. Now, at the beginning, the Kaaba was Baytul Maqdis. It was Jerusalem. And we see in the hadith of Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhu, narrated in Bukhari, that the first 16 to 17 months of the Muslim stay in Medina, the Kaaba the Qibla was Baytul Maqdis, and so the Muslims used to pray towards Baytul Maqdis. And there are many reasons given for this. One of them may be that it was seen as a place of purity because, of course, the Kaaba had idols in it at the time. But this was the way also of the prayer of the different Anbiya that came before. Now we see also in Al-Qurtubi that it's mentioned by certain scholars that some of the Anbiya alayhim as-salam before and some of the awliya before, what they used to do is when they were in Jerusalem, when they used to worship, then they would worship towards Baytul Maqdis, but they would do it in the direction of the Kaaba as well. So if you imagine, they're facing south and they're performing their worship, whatever it may be, towards the Baytul Maqdis, towards the Kaaba, with the dome of the rock, with the rock in the middle. So in this way they're worshipping towards both. And this was because, of course, this was the Qibla. And the original Qibla was, of course, the Kaaba. In the time of Adam alayhi salam, he had built the Kaaba. This was his Qibla. In the time of Nuh alayhi salam as well, the Qibla was the Kaaba. But then when the big flood came, the Kaaba was also destroyed. And so it's after that that Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam built the Kaaba. And then once again this was the Qibla. But after this, for the Banu Israel, the Baytul Maqdis was made the Qibla. So originally, the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims used to perform their salat towards the Baytul Maqdis. And then these ayat were revealed. Of course, the Muslims at the time had a great love for the Kaaba. And the Prophet ﷺ himself had a great love for the Kaaba. And so he hoped in his heart that Allah Ta'ala would send down the command at some point to turn and worship the Kaaba. But the command took a while to come. And so this was also a test for the Arabs. As much love as they had for the Kaaba, they still had to worship the other way. And this pleased the Jews at the time in Medina greatly, because they saw that the Muslims were worshipping the same thing that they were worshipping, meaning that they were worshipping the same direction. But then 16 to 17 months into the stay in Medina Munawwara, the direction was changed to the Kaaba. And so then Allah Ta'ala says, سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ, and the ignorant ones from amongst the people. And this is in reference mainly to the Banu Israel in Medina. سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ, they will say, these ignorant people will say, مَا وَلَّاهُمْ عَنْ قِبْلَتِهِمُ الَّتِي كَانُوا عَلَيْهَا, what is it that turned them away from the Qibla, from the direction that they were facing before? So what is it? And what they were trying to say is that because they have turned away from the Baytul Maqdis and now they're facing the Kaaba, it is as though the Prophet ﷺ is going backwards. So he's now facing the Kaaba, and slowly he will return to the religion of his people, idolatry. This is what they were trying to say. But what is it that has turned him away from Baytul Maqdis in terms of his worship? It's basically the fact that he wants to go back to the religion of his people. قُلْ لِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ, say that to Allah belongs the east and the west. So it is not for us to worry about which way we're facing. It is for Allah to decide which way we will go, and ultimately Allah is in charge of the east and the west. To Him belongs the dominion of the east and the west. So it is He who will decide. يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ, He guides whomsoever He wants to the straight path. So these were people who lived with the Prophet ﷺ, the Banu Israel at the time. They had access to him directly. They were able to speak to him, they were able to listen to him, and yet they were not guided. And alhamdulillah, even though we haven't met him, still we have been guided. This is from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He guides whomsoever He wants. And this is what He has said here. To Him belongs the east and the west. He decides which way the Qibla will be. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, and in this way we have made you an ummah which is wasat. And what does wasat mean? It can mean moderate. It can mean the one which goes in the middle, treads the middle path. It can mean just. It can mean all of these things. And we know that it is said, خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ أَوْسَاطُهَا, that the best of actions, the best of situations is the middle one. The best path is the middle path. We don't go towards any extreme. This is the way of Islam, this is the way of this ummah. We always tread the middle path. we have this balance. And we have examples of this balance elsewhere in the Qur'an. Allah Ta'ala tells us, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. You are the best of nations that has been brought forth for the people, for the benefit of the people. What do? تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. You call towards good, but you also forbid from evil. So you don't go completely one way or the other. You have this middle path and you have this balance. We are a nation who live between hope and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't go too far into hope, so then we think, Allah is most forgiving, I can do anything I want. Allah is the Ghafoor, the Rahim, is the oft forgiving and the most merciful. I don't need to worry, I can do anything I want. But in the same way, we're not overcome with fear to the point where we think, there's no point. Anything I do is of no use. I'm doomed anyway. No, we have this middle ground. We are also a just nation. Wasat can mean adl. We are just. We fight for what is true and what is proper and what is correct. We fight for justice and we uphold justice. And so this is for us then to reflect on ourselves, that are we just in our dealings with people? Because if we're not, and we should be honest with ourselves, if we're not just, then this is not from the characteristics of a believer, and it's not from the characteristics of this ummah. So we tread the middle ground, the middle path. It is also the sirat al-mustaqim, the straight path. As long as we tread upon this path, then we will be successful, inshallah. So we have been made an ummah wasat. We have been made a just ummah, an ummah that goes down the middle path. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. And we have been brought forth so that we might be witnesses upon the people that came before. So on the Day of Judgment, and we see the hadith in Bukhari where the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned Nuh alayhi salam and how he will be asked on the Day of Judgment, did you pass on the message to your people? And we know that he has passed on the message. So he will say, he will reply, yes, I passed on the message. Then it will be asked of his people, his nation, did he pass on the message to you? They will deny that no, he didn't pass on the message. So then it will be asked of him, who is your witness? So he will say, the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are my witnesses. And we are his witnesses because we know that he did pass on the message. We know from the Qur'an. Allah has told us in the Qur'an. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فَلَبِثَ فِيهِمْ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا 50 عَامًا. And we sent Nuh alayhi salam to his people, and so he lived amongst them for 1,000 minus 50 years, meaning 950 years. He lived amongst them for 950 years, calling them towards Allah, but they didn't listen. And so then they were destroyed with that flood. So we will be witnesses for Nuh alayhi salam and the Anbiya and the other Anbiya who didn't have many followers. So this might make us feel proud. We might think, yes, we'll have a great role on the Day of Judgment. It's a powerful thing. Nuh alayhi salam is using us as his witnesses. How honorable is this? But then we are reminded by Allah, وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be a witness upon you. He will be a witness upon you. Because remember, he has passed on the message to us as well. How much do we follow that message? So if on the Day of Judgment we are found to come short of the standards that we should have, then remember, we won't be able to say that no, I didn't receive the message really. Because no, we did receive the message, And the Prophet ﷺ will say, I did pass on the message. And we know it's the truth. We know that he has passed on the message really. So we shouldn't be arrogant, we shouldn't be proud of that fact. We must remember that we will also be held to question. So it's not just the people of the past, we will also be held to question. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الْقِبْلَةَ الَّتِي كُنْتَ عَلَيْهَا إِلَّا لِنَعْلَمَ مَنْ يَتَّبِعُ الرَّسُولَ مِمَّنْ يَنْقَلِبُ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ. Then Allah says that we did not make the Qibla towards Bayt al-Maqdis except as a test, except to see who follows the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and who turns away on his heels. Remember, these people loved the Kaaba. All the Arabs, even before Islam, they had this affinity for the Kaaba. And this is actually from the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he says, رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ عِنْدَ بَيْتِكَ الْمُحَرَّمِ رَبَّنَا لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ فَاجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ. Oh Allah, oh my Lord, he made this dua, oh my Lord, I have left my family here in this valley with nothing in it, so that they might live there and so that they might establish their prayer. لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. So then, oh my Lord, make the people's hearts, pull the people's hearts towards this place. أَفْئِدَةً مِنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ. Pull the people's hearts towards that place. And it is an amazing place. That our hearts, even though we might be sitting here, our hearts yearn to be over there. This is from the grace of Allah Ta'ala. And this is the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so those people, even the people before Islam had come, even those people, the Arabs, they had this love for the Kaaba. So they also wanted the Kaaba to be their Qibla, that they were tested by Allah for all these months. And they were made to worship towards Bayt al-Maqdis, which from Medina Munawwara is the directly opposite direction. Because that's towards the north and Mecca is towards the south. So they were having to worship in the opposite direction to the Kaaba. And so this was a test for them. And Allah says He tested them to see who will actually still follow the Messenger. Who is it that will not question the command of Allah and he will still just follow the Messenger, whichever way he prays? And who is it that will turn on his heels and say, no, I can't handle this, I don't want this anymore? وَإِنْ كَانَتْ لَكَبِيرَةً. And indeed this was a great thing. This was a big sacrifice for them. This was a great test for them. Because they saw the Kaaba as a place of worship. They wanted to worship towards it. They knew it was the Baytullah. They knew that it had been made by Ibrahim alayhi salam. They had so much love for it, and still they were being called upon to worship in the opposite direction for this many months. This was a very difficult thing for them. لَكَبِيرَةً إِلَّا عَلَى الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ. It was difficult and a great thing, except for those people that Allah had guided. For those people it didn't matter. As difficult as it might be, they understood that Allah had commanded them to worship in that other direction, and so this is what they did. They were guided. So this is a sign of guidance, where a person worships as Allah wants him to. Where a person doesn't follow his own desires, but only does as Allah has commanded him to do so. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Then the question came, that what about the people who have passed away? There were many Muslims who had actually passed away before the changing of the Qibla towards Mecca. What about those people? They died worshipping towards Bayt al-Maqdis. What about them? Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah Ta'ala will not make their salah invalid. He will not make it go to waste. Inna Allah bin nasi la ra'ufur rahim. Surely Allah is most affectionate with the people and most merciful. Now notice here that Allah refers to the salah the salah of those people who had passed as their iman. لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah will not lay to waste their salah, He will not lay to waste their iman. So the salah is referred to as iman, showing the closeness that salah has with a person's iman. If a person has iman, then he will perform his salah. It's one of those natural things that will happen. And so if a person is not performing the salah, then this reflects a deficiency in his iman. He may well have iman, but it means that it's deficient. If a person wants to complete his iman, he must perform his salah. And we know that salah is one of the 5 pillars. So if a person has one of the pillars missing, then it will be weak. So his iman will be weak. So it's referred to as iman. And then Allah Ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ that we see your face turning towards the heavens often. And this is in reference to his desire for the revelation to come from Allah, the command to come from Allah, that now turn towards the Kaaba. So of course he wanted it. He wanted to turn towards the Kaaba and worship, but of course the command hadn't come yet, so he didn't. فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا. Allah is saying to His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we have seen you turning towards the heavens, seeking this revelation, this command. We will now surely give you a qibla that you love. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. So now turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. Notice how Allah Ta'ala didn't say Al-Kaaba, because that would be very difficult for us, living so far away. And of course it would be difficult for Medina Munawwara, facing the Kaaba directly. So by saying Masjid al-Haram, it then opens it up a bit more and makes it a bit easier. So as long as you're facing in that direction, it's okay. You don't have to be very, very accurate, because it's impossible. وَحَيْثُمَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرًا. And wherever you might find yourselves, turn yourselves towards Masjid al-Haram when you're performing your salah. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ لَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. Although those people, the Banu Israel, are ridiculing you about turning towards the Masjid al-Haram, remember that they do know. They know that it's the truth. Surely the people who have been given the book, they know that it's the truth from their Lord. But of course, they don't listen. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا يَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah is not ignorant regarding that which they do. Allah knows. And of course, if Allah knows what they do, He also knows what we do. So we should always be aware of our actions, because we must remember Allah is watching us. He is listening to us. He knows what we do. He knows what we think. He knows which way our eyes go. He knows everything. So we must always understand that if Allah knows everything, then we should avoid doing anything that will displease Him, as big or as small as it might be.